Well, hello everybody and welcome to my latest sky guide looking at stars around the solstice. Now, first of all, we're going to start off with the customary look at our nearest star, the Sun, which has become slightly more exciting than it was the last time we did this because there is a sunspot on it. Active region 2765 here has appeared. What we can glean from looking at this in various spectra is that the magnetic polarity of this is such that this is a cycle 25 sunspot. We are probably pretty much done with solar cycle 24 now, coming out of the other side and looking into solar cycle 25 building up. However, we are still, as we were last year, we still have 77% of days are spotless. And that is a record that you have to go back to 1913 to exceed. So the deepest solar minimum in over 100 years is currently what we've got. And they're saying the forecasts for it are pretty much that 25 will be similar to 24. And so the solar cycles 22 and 23 before that were much bigger. So we look forward to the Sun. Now, one of the things wrapped up with this, there does seem to be a connection between noctilucent clouds and the solar minimum, and basically the deal is that a deep minimum does seem to give you good noctilucent clouds. And it so happens that this picture here is taken by NASA's AIM spacecraft, which orbits over the poles and takes photographs of noctilucent clouds forming, and it saw its first ones this year on the 17th of May, and that's one of the earliest starts to an NLC season since that spacecraft was put up 14 years ago. So do have a look at the northern sky, northwest to northeast, any time after sunset. As you get into the deep blue light, it will never quite get dark around the solstice time, but you may well see noctilucent clouds, and the further north you are, the better it is, but on the other hand, the lighter the sky as well, so you guys down south, you get a chance at it too, and this continues until about the beginning of August. Now, this is a time-lapse that I did a few years ago, 2017, and you can see at the top screen there, Capella has just gone off the screen, Capella and the kids. And you see these beautiful waves and whirls and the movement of this cloud here. That's a second sequence I did there. Wonderful waves. This is filmed from my home in Larne, and there you can see Venus going off to the upper right there, and the oncoming dawn, we lose it to that. So that is noctilucent clouds. Okay, so let's have a little look around the sky around the time of the solstice. Now then, there is a bit of a misconception with this, that a lot of astronomy clubs and so on say, well, there's no point in doing astronomy between May and August because the sky is too bright. But actually, yes, there is some residual light in the sky. Certainly here in Northern Ireland, it doesn't get completely dark from the end of May to about the beginning of August, and of course that's the noctilucent cloud season that I was talking about. But actually there are some great stars to see in the sky, provided you sort of confine yourself to the brighter objects that are quite easily seen. So what we'll do here is, now the solstice this year, being a leap year, is on the 20th of June, so we'll set the date to that. And also I've set the time to 1:25 in the morning. Reason being that really is the local midnight. Belfast is sort of 6 degrees west of Greenwich Meridian, and of course we have British summertime to throw into the equation as well, so we're not on UT here, we're UT plus 1, so that's your hour there, and it's 24 minutes, actually 25 minutes, depending exactly where you are, a little more even, about sort of up to 45 if you're out in Mayo and Kerry and places. And this is the sky here, so let's have a little look. Now the first thing we're going to look for here is the three bright stars looking sort of southeast and fairly high up. Now we have here the stars here, Deneb, Vega, Altair, and that is quite obvious, and it's what Sir Patrick Moore christened the summer triangle. very much in evidence. It's actually the best time to look at it really is in about sort of October in the evening, but if you're up very late at night, 1:24, 25, then it looks great in the summer sky. Now we've got Cygnus the Swan here, Vega in Lyra here, and Altair in Aquila the Eagle lower down. And we'll sort of look in a bit closer at this. Let's zoom in first of all on Deneb, very bright star, and very distant actually. Let's have a look. It's 1411 light years, so that's a very distant star. So intrinsically very bright. Absolute magnitude is pretty. I think where's absolute magnitude here? There we are, -6.93. If that was 32 light years away, it would be a -7 star, probably visible in the daytime. But that's Deneb. Now let's look in a bit closer at Deneb. And hopefully what happens here is that Stellarium does show me the North American Nebula. Let's have a closer look at that. If I zoom in on that, this is the North American Nebula, NGC 7000. As you see, it's an astonishing likeness. Here's the sort of eastern seaboard with New York, and then down to Florida, then around to the Gulf of Mexico, and then this is Mexico down here, and the California coast and Canada up top. It's an amazing likeness. And just next to that is the Pelican Nebula here. Now you may see those in the summer. You're probably better off seeing them through a telescope in the autumn. When there's a bit more contrast in the sky, but they can be seen, and they show up nicely on cameras that have good red sensitivity. This is all hydrogen alpha light here, which is quite deep in the red. A lot of digital cameras filter that red light, but you can get cameras suitably modified where they put a less effective red filter in, and that lets a little bit of the infrared through, and you can see this red colour here. So that's around Deneb. Now just coming down a little bit, the star Saturn there, and that area also has a lot of hydrogen alpha areas around it. It's quite dramatic. This is all star forming regions. Great stuff going on there. So what we'll do now, we'll go a little bit further down Cygnus the Swan, and we'll come to this star here, and we'll center that up. Now that star is Beta Cygni, and this is one of the things that you can look at quite well, even in the lightness of the summer sky, because it's a bright star, third magnitude. And what's interesting about it is, of course, it's a double star. It is probably the most gorgeous double star in the sky. There are enthusiasts who know more about that sort of thing than I do, but this one has always been a good sight to me, and it's very impressive to show people, even through a small telescope. Don't need a big telescope to split this one. So let's have a look in at Albireo A and B. And Stellarium here even shows them as slightly different colours. They are quite actually dramatic in the eyepiece. A here, magnitude 3.35, is a bright gold star, and Beta 2 here, that's a blue star, magnitude 5.1. So a great contrast in both brightness and colour between those two stars of Beta Cygni. So okay, well, having looked at that, we'll come back out now, and we will head on up towards the constellation Lyra. Now there's a few things to see in Lyra. First of all, we'll have a look at Vega itself. Vega is the bright star in Lyra. It's actually quite nearby. It is only 25 light years away, so it's one of our sort of fairly local group of stars. It's quite bright. It's magnitude 0. It is a lot of the year the second brightest star in the sky after Arcturus. Of course, when Sirius comes up during the winter months, that takes over completely. And there's some interesting things just to see apart from Vega here. Now, this star just here, this is Epsilon Lyra. And Epsilon Lyra is an interesting one because it's a double. And furthermore, each of the doubles is double, so it is called the double-double. So let's go in and have a look at that. We can see initially that the two parts of that separate quite easily, but you have got to get in pretty close to then split the other two, and there you have to go right into there you are. That's part one of the double, and we come out from there and go to here. Okay, and this is the other half of the double. Now I have seen that in a modest telescope, but it was a Maksutov-Cassegrain telescope, so the feature of that is that it, at the expense of light gathering, it gives you more magnification. So a Maksutov-Cassegrain telescope, great for splitting the double. I've actually even got webcam footage of all four members of that. Now then, while we're in Lyra, let's go down here, and this is a planetary nebula. Specifically, it is the Ring Nebula, and we can zoom in on that. There, you've probably seen that there. It is it's quite dim, magnitude 8.8. Not sure you'll get it in the summer sky, but you certainly will as we go into July and August and September, where the sky contrast gets much better. So that's where that is, the Ring Nebula. While I'm in this vicinity of the sky and talking about planetary nebulas, I'm just going to go and find the other one, and that is Messier 27. It's down here. There we go. This is Messier 27. It's sort of just some way below Albireo, Beta Cygni. And you can recognize this, I think the original series of Star Trek features the Dumbbell Nebula at Messier 27. And that's a bit brighter than the Ring. It's magnitude 7.4. It's actually quite easy to see in even a fairly small telescope. So that's really worth looking out for, the Dumbbell Nebula. And while I'm in this part of the sky, I do have a favourite little object. And let's just see if I can find it here. Maybe too far out. No, it's over here. It's over here. It is really. I'm looking for Brocchi's cluster, or the coat hanger. And I'm not seeing it. There's not enough sky contrast for me to see it. Oh, here it is. It's a bit. There we are. So it's a bit higher up there. Right. This here. We'll click on that. There is Brocchi's cluster, and it's quite easy to see. The stars are just about naked eye. Certainly in binoculars or telescope, you'll have no problem seeing that. It usually appears upside down like that, depending on exactly where it is in the sky. But that is the coat hanger, and it's one of my favourites. Now then, it is worth having a good look around the southern horizon, because there's plenty to see there. And the first thing I'm going to look at in that southern horizon, we've got two planets next to each other, and we're going to have a look here just at Jupiter first. Now then, okay, we're going to zoom in on Jupiter. Let's have a look. Now there is Jupiter with the 4 Galilean moons visible. We'll go closer on the disk. Now we can see here just, and Stellarium does do this with correct timing, that we're just losing the great red spot off the edge of the disk. Jupiter rotates that way from what is left to right on this screen. So the great red spot here, which is a huge storm that would envelop the entire Earth and has been raging for at least 300 years and maybe more. That storm is just going off the edge. So if you looked at Jupiter, say, an hour earlier, and you would be able to see it. So if you went to 12:25, let's come back an hour. There we go. Yep. So see there, you get a good view there, just after midnight, or even at midnight, of the great red spot. We're sticking with 1:25 here, and it's just moving off the edge at that point. So that's Jupiter and its 4 moons. Just to give an idea of this, by the way, I will just do the little measurement here. To gauge how high in the sky this is. We are sort of there, so we're sort of 9-10 degrees above the horizon at this point. So that's where Jupiter and Saturn are at this point. We'll go and have a look at Saturn while we're here. Here is Saturn, and Saturn's looking pretty gorgeous too, actually. The rings are nice and wide open, so they were quite fairly close to opposition, so there's not much of a shadow of the planet on the rings here. Basically, when Saturn and the Earth and the Sun are in line, that shadow there will disappear. And the rings nice and wide open, and they will remain so for a few more years, and then they'll collapse up into a line again the next coming few years. So that's Saturn. Great view there of Saturn and Jupiter. Those two planets are moving around the sky together and will continue to do so for a while, and actually on the 21st of December they will come so close that to the naked eye they will look like one star, and you will need binoculars to actually separate them apart. That's a really good conjunction, one of the best in many, many years. So other things to see in that southern sky. Well, here is the familiar shape of the teapot for those who watch Sagittarius. It never gets really very high at our latitude. It's much, much more significant if you're at equatorial or southern hemisphere latitudes, but it is quite something else. The teapot, good asterism, and in that area, this is about the brightest object you can see from our latitude in Sagittarius. This is the globular cluster Messier 22. It is actually even brighter and bigger than Messier 13, though not quite as famous, and the reason being that it's always quite low down and difficult to see. But that's a fabulous globular cluster, magnitude 5.1, which it makes it a little brighter than Messier 13. Perhaps look at Messier 13 in a moment, because that's also on show. So these are the things in the southern sky. Of course, this is all down here. This is all the Milky Way. Not the best time to be seeing it. Really, you get a better Milky Way as we go into August, September. But this is pretty good if you can see it. Of course, being in the south of the sky, the south of the sky is darker than the north of the sky at this point. So that's the southern sky. Now then, there is higher up in the sky, again far more easily accessible, the constellation Hercules. Now that's that four-sided shape of stars here, and if you look at this in binoculars, there will appear to be an extra star apart from the four there, and when you get a telescope on that, you realize that that is also, like Messier 22 we just looked at, that is a globular cluster, and probably the most easily visible one, if not quite the brightest, magnitude 5.8. That's not quite as bright as Messier 22, but it is full of stars. It takes a nice photograph and looks very, very good. If you really want to see the best globular clusters in the sky, I'm afraid they're not visible from here. I've never seen Omega Centauri in a scope, but I'm told it's fantastic. It's about 2 or 3 magnitudes brighter than Messier 13. The one I have seen, just adjacent to the small Magellanic Cloud in the southern sky, is 47 Tucani. And I was actually at an observatory in Australia a good few years ago, 2002, and a guy had a 15-inch Dobsonian scope there, and he just says to me, "Hey mate, come and have a look at this." And I looked at it. I was absolutely amazed. All I could say was, it's full of stars, because 47 Tucani was a great sight. Messier 13 is about the closest thing we've got here. It's good, but it's not that good. Hercules actually has 2 globular clusters, and the other one's well worth a look as well. If we zoom out of that and go to this one here, that is Messier 92, which is also a globular. Let's zoom in on 92. There it is. It's almost as good as Messier 13. It's not quite. It's a little less bright. It's magnitude 6.4. So you probably won't see that with the naked eye. I've never seen M13 with the naked eye, but I know people who have, and at 5.8 it is perfectly well possible. So there we are. So that is a quick look at some of the things we can see in the summer sky. The beauty of this around the solstice, notice there is no moon, so at least you stand half a chance there, even though the northern part of the sky will still have some sunshine in it. So there we are. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And keep looking up.